Good morning, Breakfast with Bacon fans. You don't know this, and my guest doesn't even know this, but I was actually recently looking for an excuse to have Kevin Wells on my show. And little did I realize I would get an email from Sophia Institute saying, "Hey, Kevin Wells is on." I'm like, no need to say anymore. He's on the show. I called him yesterday, and here we are together in less than 24 hours. And today, my dear friend and a good, holy man who, as much as we're going to talk about baseball and God, he loves God first. He seeks to get to heaven, get his family to heaven, get every one of us to heaven. But he and I both know that loving God, having joy for the church is not mutually exclusive from this earth, from enjoying the things that God has given us. And so today, Kevin Wells is on to talk about an article he recently wrote, but a movie that is being re-released from 2007 that I am so excited to watch. It's called Champions of Faith, a baseball edition. I want to make sure I didn't say athlete edition. And in that movie, I can't wait to talk about, are a couple people that are important to me because it's Milwaukee Brewer legacy here. So Kevin Wells is a former sports writer for the Tampa Bay Rays, and he was all in, and he never had a conversion, but he fully went into his Catholic faith, and now he writes constantly. Kevin, you've written five, seven books at this point. How many have you written?
5 books.
Five books, and they are good. I've read half of them. I've got to get to the others. And I'm just excited to have you talk today, not only about, we'll touch on your books, and you're going to promise me to come on the air soon to talk about your newest book that's being released too, right? Okay. But today we're going to talk about this movie that play ball is going to be yelled across stadiums today around the country, which I'm so excited. I've been waiting since the last pitch of the Milwaukee Brewers losing game last season. Um, and this weekend, this baseball story is coming up, but it's not about baseball. It is about baseball players whose hearts are totally turned towards heaven. That's enough of my introduction. Thanks for being on the show. What are your thoughts about this movie, and why were you so excited to write about it again?
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me back in, Christine. Really quick, I just want to, for your viewer, um, only podcast host in the solar system right now to have the Sacred Heart of Jesus in the background with a Milwaukee Brewers jersey on and a hat on. No one else in the solar system is like Christine Bacon right now. So you should be
Well,
quite
thank
honored
you.
to have Christine.
Jesus
And
loves baseball.
he does, and we can talk about that too. Why he does? It's a very Catholic sport. Uh, so yeah, Christine, as you know, as you and I both know, we've actually been to a baseball game together when the Brewers smoked my Orioles last year. But yeah, this movie, just to get right into it, let's be candid. Oftentimes, some of these quote unquote Christian movies will come out that have sports themes, and they just really don't get it done. You know, they're well-meaning, but they're kind of a hokey storyline. And
They're
but
cheesy.
yeah. I mean, God bless the producers for trying to do something of God, and I'll never judge it. But what happened was, so we all know when the Passion of Christ came out, we all were startled into something that was a cinematic masterpiece, and in so many ways, it moved our hearts, it touched us, it jolted us, and I remember that time. Some folks from Hollywood tried to come out with other Christian or even Catholic movies. I remember the Nativity Story came out. There was a couple others that actually did okay in the box office, but I always thought, well, there's really nothing that really grabs me. It's just not there. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, this movie came out called Champions of Faith, Baseball Edition. And I thought, well, this is going to be kind of silly because I'm an old baseball writer, and old journalists are kind of jaundiced, and they
Mm.
kind of see these things as it's going to be silly. And but I got a copy, and I watched it, and about 20, 25 minutes in, I found myself crying, which, I'm Irish, and I'll cry every now and then, but I was weeping. Now the story that really got me was called "The Chicken Runs at Midnight," and we'll get into that later if you'd like to. But
I would love
but it
to.
wasn't only that story; it was the story of how Mike Piazza Hall of Famer, dealt with Roger Clemens the year that he was hit in the head by a fastball. And then 5 months later, Piazza breaks his bat, and part of the bat goes back up to the mound, and Clemens picks up a shard back like it was a weapon and threw it at Piazza. I mean, at the World Series, it startled millions, and Piazza talked about, how going through that, and story after story after story. I kept waiting for one of them to be a clunker, like no good. Every story told was a powerful testimony, so powerful that I went out and I bought a dozen copies. And this is back when they had CDs. So I bought, and I gave them to my brothers. I gave them to my old high school teammates where I played high school baseball. Some of my friends, I said, hey man, you got to watch this film. This thing gets it. And really, to a man, everyone that got back to me said, this thing was good. So why are we talking now about this film? It came out in 2007. Well, I think the story is somebody saw it this past year, and they were so deeply moved by the stories that still hold up that they called the creator. His name is Tom. He works for Sophia Institute Press. He was executive producer, and they said, we will do anything to get this thing back out there. So Tom knew me. I'd written a book years ago with Sophia called The Priest We Need to Save the Church. He remembered I was a baseball writer, and he said, Kevin, man, would you watch this movie? I said, Tom, I've watched this movie five or 10 times with my son Sean. He said, oh my good, that's great. Well, will you actually write a piece on this? And I'll say, I'll write 5 pieces on it. So I've written a few already, but I'm encouraging, Christine, I'm encouraging your viewer, and I know we're probably boring the non-baseball fans, the sports fans, but I promise you this, even if you are not a sports fan or a baseball fan, shame on you for not being a baseball fan, by the way. But yes, Christine, you know this. I mean, shame on all of them. But even if you do not care about sports, if you watch this movie, as Christine had said a few minutes ago, it'll be on EWTN a few times this weekend. You can buy it on Amazon Prime. This movie will move you by the testimonies that these Major League Baseball players give about their Catholic faith.
And that's we can make all the conversation, all the excitement about baseball, but that's exactly what I want you to take from what Kevin said is this isn't about baseball. This is just taking the venue of baseball and saying, these are some famous in the baseball world men who turn people towards God. They turn their lives towards God. They use their words to get people to focus on heaven. And that's what the movie does. And these stories pull you in. And I only know the one story, the Chickens Run at Midnight story. And I just can't wait to watch it. And I am excited that's being re-released because I'm ashamed to say I never saw this movie in 2007. I was looking back going, how did I not know about this? Where was I? What was going on in my life? So I think it's a really good time. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin. Something fresh, something new is happening in our country and our world right now in terms of our faith. There's just something in the spiritual world percolating. And so it seems like this must come out to reignite. I don't know. It's like a flow, and it needs to join that flow of water that is being percolated. Do you sense the same thing? Like it's time?
Yeah, I really do, Christine. I guess it's not really, I haven't really articulated your feelings, but yeah, I do. It is in the air. And I guess I'll analogize it actually to this movie. Like when this movie came out, there was like Major League Hall of Famers, Tom Glavine, Mike Piazza, a bunch of players are talking openly about their Catholic faith. What it did to me when I saw it back then, I was kind of a quiet Catholic. I loved Mary. I went to adoration, tried to get the weekday masses, but it was quiet. When I saw these players speak, I said, you know what? That jolts me. That sort of grabs me by the face mask and says, you got to get it right, Kevin. If you love your faith, share it. So to answer what you just proposed, Christine, yeah, I think what's going on now, it seems anyway, there's a bubbling up in the West, or we'll just say America, where there's a realization that we lost the plot for many years. We lost reason. I always trace it back to, we could trace it way back, but I trace it back to 2020, COVID, where we seem to lose
But there it
Reason
is.
seemed to just melt like wax throughout the West, throughout the world, throughout America. And I think finally we're sort of stepping away. And let's be candid, part of this is the new administration saying that we need to start whacking away at DEI, wokeism, the silliness. So let's be honest, part
Censorship. I've been
censorship.
censored twice.
Yeah, Christine, you know this as well as anybody. You're prophetic, you proclaim what's in your heart and soul about God, and you get censored. So you do have a president now, an administration that will not only help Christine Bacon, but will help these folks who were arrested for praying out in front of abortion clinics. So now there's more of a liberty, a freedom to proclaim what's in your heart, and you will not get taken out. So yeah, I agree. And really, last thing I'll say on this, Christine, with this sort of this gap, this opening now, if I think it's incumbent upon all of us to, if we sort of lost our voice, we're like, you know what, I don't feel like going to jail. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to blah, blah, blah. Well, now we've been given the freedom to speak. So I hope that all of us are doing a deep dive introspectively and saying, what can I do now to make up for lost time and really proclaim God, my faith, to my neighbor, my family, whomever? Because yeah, you're right, Christine. It is there. It's for the taking right now.
Yeah, and as you point to, I think what's important about this movie is that it takes leaders, right? It's got these famous people who fame is always putting you in the place of a leader. And when we see leaders do something, it gives us permission to do the same, to follow, because so many of us aren't as courageous as we need to be, as you just said about yourself, right? I mean, I was private about my faith. And so this idea of taking 3 stories and just putting them front and center of people who are famous or popular or celebrities, and they're pointing us towards God. I think it is. It just seemed like it's time. This movie seems brand new. It seems brand new, and it is for me because I can't wait to hear these stories. So enough of that. Can you go right into the chicken runs at midnight story? Because just reading it in the article, by the way, I said early, you have also written an article and it is in
Catholic Exchange.
thank you. My brain was slowing down. And I will connect that article in the show notes here so people can read it. It was great. But Craig Counsell, the Milwaukee boy, he was our manager until he left us for Chicago, but we still love him. He's very central to that story as well. Let us know, tell us about that story and what does it have to do with our Catholic faith?
Okay. So the story I'm going to tell, Christine, right now, and viewer, please perk up and listen. It's if you follow it, you're going to be astounded, but you have to follow it. The story is true, and it is miraculous as any modern day miracle I'm aware of, and it's in this movie. The long and short of it is this: there was a baseball coach, a third base baseball coach named Rich Donnelly. Rich Donnelly was with the Pittsburgh Pirates in the early 90s. A successful coach. He was considered for a few managerial jobs, did his job well, but he was also living in a life of sin. He had 4 children, was living in Ohio and not behaving well. Unfortunately, Christine, as a baseball writer, I traveled with the Tampa Bay Rays, and there is I don't cast aspersions on anyone, but baseball in the road trips, they do entice players to do things they wouldn't do at home. So anyway, Rich Donnelly got caught in this trap. His daughter Amy, it was his youngest child. She was 18, and she was dying of brain cancer. And Amy, her only hero was her dad, Rich. And she knew that dad was kind of messing up at home because there was strife in the home. There was fights between mom and dad, and things weren't right. And Rich knew that it was because of his choice of lifestyle. And all of a sudden, Amy called up her dad one day and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm sorry." And Dad said, "What's wrong, Amy?" "Well, I have a brain tumor. I'm dying." And Dad's like, "What? First of all, who apologizes for having a brain tumor?" So that's what. So Rich began to think, "What have I done? I've wasted all this time with my daughter. I've behaved in a sinful lifestyle. Um, I am my daughter's hero and I don't pay her any mind. Shame on me. And my time is running out. So um, that year, his team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, actually made it to the playoffs. And at this point, Amy is in the midst of chemotherapy, radiation. She has no hair. She has a crown on her head. She's had brain surgery. And who comes to the Pittsburgh Pirates game up in Pittsburgh on a cold October night? Amy. And Amy's cheering her dad on from the stands, just a withered body, cancer shot throughout her entire head, her brain, cheering her dad on. And here's where the story starts. So dad is realizing if Amy's going to fight for her life, then I need to fight for my own life. I need to fight this lifestyle of sin. So after the game, Amy says, hey, Dad, I have a question for you. When you're the third base coach and you got your hands cupped and you're screaming at the guy at second base, the base runner, she's like, what are you yelling at? And Amy's 18 years old. She's kind of a kooky, fun senior in high school. She said, what are you yelling, Dad? The chicken runs at midnight. The chicken runs at midnight. And Rich is like, Amy, what are you talking about? I don't know, Dad. It was just in my head. And Rich is like, okay, whatever, all right, Amy. So that sort of became the running joke of the family. The chicken runs at midnight. And when she died 3 months later, what do they put on her tomb? What do they put on her grave?
Headstone.
The chicken runs at midnight. Now, the miracle.
I'm already welling up because I know where this goes, and I'm trying to hold back my tears.
This defies all. There's no comprehension.
This can only have been lined up by God.
Yes. In the architecture of miracles, in their incomprehensibility, in their supernaturality, in their lack of understanding, this is what happened. So the Donnelly family goes on, and Rich is pulling away from that life of sin, and things are getting better in the home. And so it's 1997. It's game 7 of the World Series. It's an extra innings. This doesn't happen in World Series in game 7. This doesn't happen. It just turns out that I had been covering the game for the Tampa Tribune. Not that I have anything to do with it, but I was there the night of the miracle, and I had no idea that a miracle took place. But this is what happened. So Rich Donnelly is now the third base coach for the Florida Marlins, and they're playing the Cleveland Indians. Cleveland Indians were the cocky, brash, favored team that was supposed to win that game, win that World Series. But the scrappy Marlins fought to 7 games, and here they are. It's the 7th game. They're in the 11th inning. It's in Miami, and the bases are loaded, and Rich Donnelly's the coach at third base. A guy named Edgar Renteria, an infielder, is up for the Marlins. Charles Nagy's on the mound. He throws a curveball to Edgar Renteria. Renteria reaches out, slaps the ball. It grazes off of Nagy's glove. The second baseman, Tony Fernandez, is this far away from getting the ball just to toss it to the shortstop, Omar Vizquel, for the force out. But Nagy doesn't get it. Fernandez doesn't get it. And the ball rolls out to center field. And who comes running home? Craig Counsell. So, big deal. Craig Counsell scores. Miami's in a uproar. They win the World Series. Game 7. It's remarkable. They win the game. Rich Donnelly at third base is jumping up and down. The fans are pouring onto the field. Remember, I was there. I saw it all.
I know. Yeah.
Stunning game. Here's what happens. So Rich Donnelly is out by second base. The Florida Marlins players are piling on top of one another. And his 2 sons come running out to him. And Tim, he was a bat boy that night. Tim is crying. And he's like, Dad, turn around. And Dad's like, what are you talking about? And again, remember, he had just won game 7 of the World Series. No, Dad, turn around. Look at the scoreboard clock. Dad's like, So Dad turns around, looks at the Pro Player Stadium, huge scoreboard clock. Both hands of the clock are pointing to heaven, pointing to midnight. Who ran home with a winning run?
Craig
A man
Counsell.
named Greg Counsell, who Christine knows as the former manager of the Brewers. Now he's the manager of the Chicago Cubs. Craig Counsell was known for a strange idiosyncrasy when he batted. So when he batted, he held his hands up really high and he flapped his arm like this
Like
to
the
kind of
chicken.
get ready. And he was known as the chicken man, who came home at exactly the stroke of midnight.
The chicken.
The chicken. Tim is weeping. Dad turns around, looks at the hands of the clock, pointing to heaven, falls on the field and says, "My God, how did Amy know?" This is 4 years later.
Yeah.
How did she know? This man who had been living a life of sin, still pulling away, gets confirmation from daughter Amy saying, "Attaboy, Dad, keep going. I'm still here with you." This is the chicken that runs at midnight. This is what I was talking about. The greatest moment of your life, and I'm part of it. So that's one of the stories that's told in this documentary. And when I when I saw this documentary like 2 weeks ago to sort of refresh myself, I
You
hadn't seen it
cried
in quite.
again, didn't you?
The waterworks are coming down
Yeah.
once again. So that's the
Yeah, I
story of
only
the.
read the article and I was like, okay, you can't do this before you go on the air. And then, just hearing it again, it's just such a God thing because it touched that family, but it touched, and now anybody who watches it, but it's not about us. It's just never about us. It's not about Amy. It's not about her dad. It's not about Craig Counsell. It's about pointing to God saying, see, I'm still here. I've never left. I plan your future before you were born. I can plan a winning run at midnight with a chicken running. I can plan your, and so it's for us to keep our eyes on him to just, I mean, I never want to make people think that we're just talking for fun, which it's really fun to talk about these stories anyway, but it is really about getting to heaven and God reminding us that he sits on the throne and all these details were worked out, you know?
Yeah, well, it's God. I mean, we know this, Christine. God works with sinful people, and He sends people in their lives, even their own daughters, even the daughter that the sinful person ignored, didn't pay attention to. I'm on the road. I got to do this thing with this person, and all of a sudden, the one who was rejected, ignored, that's the one who changes the trajectory of the sinful person's life. Her dad. This is how God, I mean, we know this. This is how God works. He writes straight with crooked lines, and he does it in incomprehensible fashion. This miracle. So Rich Donnelly today, this sinful man, right? He's a daily communicant. He told me, I talked to him a few weeks ago for this
I was
story.
just going to
He's
ask you that question. So thanks for reading my mind.
Oh yeah, I called him up. I said, "Rich, man, do you remember this doc?" Oh, Kevin. And again, I've never talked to Rich Donnelly. He said, "Kevin, my life has changed." So now, Christine, this is news for your viewer. It was news to me. Now they're making a movie like in the movie screens about called The Chicken Runs at Midnight. A book has just been written about it. It came out last year. I haven't read it yet, but I intend to. So, but his entire life has been changed. And he said, "Kevin, um, Amy always wanted to be a teacher. That's all she wanted to do. She died at 18 years old. She's the greatest teacher in the world because she taught me how to leave sin and to believe in God, and that God could create miracles to convert my heart. Now, all I want to do is two things. I want to thank Amy every single day for changing my life, and I want to thank God for bringing me Amy, who taught me how to change my life." So this is just another story in the long lines of miracles throughout down the millennia. This one's great because it's you and I love baseball, and it's kind of modern day, but that's why I'm so high on this movie.
Oh, I can't wait to watch it. And I know none of these questions were prepared before we went on the air, so I'm just curious, did you get a chance to talk to his wife? Because that would be a
No, I
great
didn't.
element to the story.
I didn't just because I could have and I should have, but I talked to Rich twice for a half an hour at a time both times. But what I had to do, Christine, actually was talk to other Major League Baseball players who were in the documentary. So I
Yeah.
could, I'd like to
You
talk
only
about
have
the
so
chicken
much
run.
time. I know, I
Yeah,
know. You can only do so much.
yeah.
Well, I mean that story was huge. And again, I'll connect the article in which you told that story to show notes here. But there are other baseball players, right? Other champions of the faith that were in there. Are you able to share any of their other stories as well? Do you
Sure.
want to, or should we just let them watch?
Well, I'll just tell one very briefly, and this is just it's just so beautiful. So there's two players on the St. Louis Cardinals who were pretty good Major League Baseball players. Nothing special. They're David Eckstein and Jeff Suppan. Run of the mill Major League
Jeff
player.
Suppan is a former Milwaukee Brewer, by the way.
I know he is. I know he is.
Just to let
So
you know.
Jeff Suppan is actually so in this film, Christine. There's probably about 24 baseball players who speak about their Catholic faith in different ways.
Oh, awesome.
Jeff Suppan, of all of the players, he was the one who touched me most deeply. And I told him this when I talked to him last week. There was something about the way he spoke about his love for God that was, he was almost like a mystic. He was so beautiful the way he discussed his faith. But anyway, Jeff Suppan and Eckstein, this year they were on the Cardinals. I think it was 2001. And Suppan didn't know that Eckstein was a Catholic because, they were kind of keeping their faith to themselves. And one day he's on the road and he goes to Mass, and who's he see? He sees his teammate, David Eckstein, at Mass. He's like, "Hey, David, you Catholic?" "Yeah, Jeff, I didn't know you were Catholic." So they become,
Right.
friends in the Catholic faith. Well, not that this really would have anything to do with it, but in the NLCS, the National League Championship Series, and the World Series, these two unheralded, middle of the road sort of bit players, Suppan becomes like Cy Young. So he's like Greg Maddux. He wins National League Championship Series MVP, throws back-to-back starts where he just looks dominant. So he wins that. Then Eckstein, this little 5'9", he's almost like Craig Counsell, this little skinny runnish
It's so funny doing
infielder.
5'9" as if he's some, short, whatever.
Right. Well, small for a baseball player, but
Yeah.
skinny, very skinny. So Eckstein, he's like, "Well, my buddy Jeff's going to do it. Hey, man, I got to step up." So he ends up going to the World Series, and he's like Barry Bonds, this little 160-pound weakling, this second baseman. So he wins the most valuable player of the World Series. So obviously they don't win MVPs because they're Catholic and they're saintly.
Right.
But what they do in this film is they say, "My goodness, how good God is that it could take these two little David versus Goliath. We're the Davids. And just for a little window in time can make us feel like Goliath. It's all of God. We just try and do our best to participate and oblige the gifts, these meager gifts that God gave us." So I guess this one story is two players speaking very humbly about how God sort of stuck his finger into their sort of athleticism, said, "For this moment, I'm going to raise you up." So very beautiful story.
Wow, I can't wait to see it because I am seeing, baseball aside, right? I'm starting to see people be more courageous in their faith. And it has taken a few of these outspoken leaders to just say, you know what, no more are we going to be quiet. And so you just need one. You just need that pebble in the water and these ripples that come out. And that's why, I mean, I've been affected. I don't know if anybody likes or dislikes Candace Owens, but I look at how courageous she has been. And she just says, look, they're going to think I'm crazy for questioning this or questioning that. And she has been instrumental in me being even louder about my faith, going, okay, well, if I get canceled, it's okay. If I speak and someone doesn't like me, it's okay. I speak the truth of transgenderism, and I have, I've been attacked by people for not loving, and yet it's causing me to not just speak out, but to learn to speak out even more lovingly. I think that's a part a lot of us miss. We're like, I'm going to be bolder. But how do you be bold and be like Christ and speaking the truth? And that's what these stories are hopefully doing for people when they watch it. And grab a popcorn, grab a box of popcorn and enjoy it, because if you're anything like me, I turned off my television in 2020. It just got too vitriolic. I just didn't like it. And so now when my husband and I do decide we have time for a movie at night, it's a Google good Catholic movies. And it'll pull up, 1947, the Ten Commandments, 1945, the Bells of St. Mary. I'm like, is there nothing in this new millennium that is good Catholic viewing? And that's what, so when they reached out, Sophia reached out to me, it was like, yes, yes, yes. I'm very excited because we need this. I think this movie was written, Kevin, for such a time as this.
It is, Christine. It's funny what you're saying right now about the boldness and the courage we need in stepping out. Even Anheuser-Busch, I read yesterday, they will no longer support these outlandish pride nights at Major League Baseball
Oh, thank
Stadium.
God.
So little by little, and again, we'll circle back to we talked about a few minutes ago, because of the new administration, because taking on DEI, et cetera. Well, their leaders, so Anheuser-Busch, sure, they was horrible in supporting it in the first place, but they're realizing, what are we doing? Why do we do
Yeah.
that? So
Everyone
they're
can turn
being,
away from their mistakes.
yeah. So we don't judge that. But one thing I always think, Christine, to sort of run a line with what you're just saying about doing the hard things. Like, I remember back in the 90s, the bracelets came out and they were good. And they said WWJD, and that was good. Everyone wore them. That was the big fad. What would Jesus do? But I'm thinking more and more, it's not what it is. What it is who was Jesus and how do I become him? How do I live like him? And Jesus clearly said, we like to sort of straitjacket parts or suffocate parts of what Jesus said, but he said, remember, when the world hates you, remember it hated me first. So for instance, Candace Owens, she doesn't care. Whoever, JD Vance, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Rich Donnelly sharing his life of sin, he doesn't care. Mike Piazza, they don't care. It's Jesus clearly said, if I am going to be of heaven, live according to his will, I must proclaim what I feel inside the best I can. I'm no theologian, I'm no great diplomat of heaven, but I will proclaim what lives in me, whether that's transgenderism or Pride Night, or I'm not going to wear the rainbow on my sleeve, whatever it is. I do think you're right, Christine, and I'll say it again. I think because the administration showed boldness, they don't care. Like, Donald Trump doesn't care. We've known this his whole life. He doesn't care what people think about him, but people are attracted to that. So I think there is some growth in the Catholic landscape. I don't know about the Protestant, maybe there is, but in the Catholic landscape, I'm seeing more and more Catholics unafraid to share their faith, and also to share what they believe on the indelicate topics, on homosexuality, Pride Night, transgenderism, whatever it is. They're coming out of the tombs.
Yes, if there's any theme that you and I are talking about today, we can sum it up really by saying holy boldness. The miracles of God are just being shown forth. So first, God had to work the miracles. Second, people had to be willing to talk about them. And that's what we're going to see. And it's just so entertaining too. This idea of the champions of the faith. Who doesn't like a good story of a champion? Who doesn't like a good story of an underdog? You know? And just aside, you kill me because here you are, you've been out of baseball writing for what, 20 years? And you're still like, every guy. So the ball was going here, it was curving around here, it was full count. And so and so was wearing red shoes with his white. It's like you guys don't forget any single detail when it comes to sports. I love sports. Yeah. There you go. There's your Baltimore Orioles. But I don't remember even which team knocked us out of the playoffs last year. It was Philly. I think it was Philadelphia Phillies, maybe. I don't know. See, I don't even remember. I know that it
Well,
was sad when we got knocked out.
I don't remember much. So journalists are taught, you gotta bring the reader into. Back when newspapers actually meant something,
Yeah.
we were taught, if they didn't see the game, they're going to read the article the next day. So you got to bring them into the game. So you got to know the details. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, the big games, obviously, like that, you remember every pitch, just because. And Christine, I think you and I are alike. See, I'm fortunate. Your Brewers are out of town. My Orioles aren't. I live in Maryland, but I will. So my one pagan idol, and it is baseball. None of the other sports, but I will watch. I will watch every single game if I can this year. Like today's opening day, we played the Toronto. We're going up to Canada to play the Blue Jays, but I'll watch every pitch of the game. But I'll watch every pitch of the second game, and if I can, if my wife doesn't kick me out of the house, she understands that's my little idol. I don't have anyone's. I'm like you. I don't watch the news. I don't watch TV, but I love baseball. There's something about baseball that's very Catholic. It's
Yeah.
timeless. There's no clock. It's eternal. It's there's something. And
You
plus, you're
sit
not
with your
supposed.
family.
Yes, yes,
You
you can
don't
talk.
have to, yeah, when you and I went to the game, it's blah, blah, blah. Okay, look at the pitch. What's that? Okay. Blah, blah, blah. You know, you can connect with your dad. You know, the Ann Donnelly, is that what her name was? The daughter?
Amy Donald.
Amy Donnelly. It's the time for the Amy's to look at dad and say, Dad, what do you think are going to do next? Look at the guy in third place. Look at the outfield. They're moving up. Look at this. And then it's a strategy. So I have always enjoyed, and you and I have done shows like this before. It's what gave me my relationship with my father, is that we were able to sit together, share a hot dog together. I had a beer. He had a beer. I had a soda. But we could talk. And if you're a typical Midwestern dad, meat and potatoes, t-shirt and jeans wearing kind of guy, they aren't going to talk about these ephemeral subjects and deep. They're going to talk about the mechanics of the car and the baseball team and the football team, but that's still a connection. That's still a father leading his child. And that's what I loved about it, is I could, you and I talked about you going to the game and watching Hank Aaron hit a grand slam. And I'm 11 years old and I jumped up. I'm like, what just happened, Dad? And he's like, Hank Aaron hit a grand slam. Ah, what's a grand slam, Dad? It was, and I can't forget those moments, because that's kind of like our God in heaven is. He sits alongside of us. He has fun with us. He smiles with us. He laughs. He's probably
That's
loving
what
when we
God.
go and have fun.
Yeah, and God gave you with your dad those moments. We all have. I don't know your relationship with your dad too much, but if things are strained or whatever is going on, God will give us Christine and Dad sitting in Brewer Stadium talking about little tiny things that
Yeah.
Christine knows. My dad loves me. My dad loves me. It's just,
Yeah.
and baseball's the sport that I believe does it the best, because it just opens you up to shut your cell phone down and talk to the person next to you in a very leisurely way. As you mentioned, you talk for 10 seconds in between pitches, 15 seconds. You watch the pitch, and then you go back into the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about baseball that really brings bonds and friendships, and and I'll just say it. Last thing I'll say, my son Sean, I've seen. He's 23 years old now. I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of games with him. And Sean and I, we're growing older now, right? We don't have the catch in the backyard. We played catch every single day. We just did. That was our way. It's like Field of Dreams. We just did it. So now I can call Sean up. He's in Tallahassee. He's about an hour north of me right now. And I say, hey, Sean, meet me downtown. I got his tickets. And we get right back into that conversation. So he might be going a direction with work that I'm really not sure of, or something, and I'm going this way. But when we get down with baseball, we connect like we did when he was 4 years old and I was a new dad. So yeah, baseball is just a magical sport. It's the sport that God gave us. I'm holding true to that.
Yeah, and I believe it will be in heaven. And I do believe God will be sitting in stands and playing with us. Maybe not God the Father, maybe he's just too glorious for that. But I believe God the Son, who is fully man as well, will be
Yes.
laughing and smiling, because there won't be suffering in heaven. So how can there not be game playing? How can there not be cheering and just, throwing popcorn at someone when you're just excited? And I do think, we don't sit with most people, even our Catholic friends, we don't sit with most people and talk deep theological subjects most of the time. We will talk about our families. We will talk about the meal that's coming up. We will talk about the holidays. We will talk about things, but it is in the connection. That's what we talk about with God. It's in the relationship. To relate, to commune is just to take two people and connect them. So it doesn't have to always be talking about um, theology. Playing baseball with your son was a connection. It tied you together. And I'm just excited, because everybody needs to watch this movie, because it'll do both. It'll entertain, it'll draw you back towards God. Um, and it's coming out this weekend. So for those people watching this video soon, it's opening weekend of baseball, and you can see it on EWTN, but it's going to be out all the time. I'm guessing, since it's also Amazon Prime, Kevin, I can just say, play the movie, Champions of Faith Baseball Edition. It'll pop up and we can watch it all year, correct?
Oh yeah, you can buy it on Amazon Prime. Matter of fact, when they just put it on Amazon Prime for the first time a few months ago because there was a demand for this movie. It's sort of like, as you mentioned, it was sort of resurrected, pulled out of the
Hmm.
grave. And I'm glad because it holds up. I mean, it stands up. It's in high definition. There's good music, like Bob Dylan's in the background. They got good music. So it's, again, it's not a hokey film. It's a good film with good storytelling. It's well done. But yeah, on this weekend, if you look at your EWTN local standings, I think Saturday it plays at 8 o'clock at night. Plays again on Sunday, but you can look at your EWTNs, or maybe you can put a link in at the end of your podcast, Christina.
Yeah, I
Tell them when it's
am.
on.
I'm going to have a link in here, plus a link to the article that talks about it. And so just, my thing, or share this with people. It's kind of a fun, uplifting story and uplifting podcast to talk about the things in a time where things are still so heavy, even though we've got a great new administration that's trying to take us from being underwater and opening up possibilities and releasing censorship and just giving us freedom of speech, freedom of breathing, freedom of sharing, freedom of spreading our faith is all out there. I'd like to get people to just keep pushing this so that if there's a person in your life that you've been trying to convert to the faith, or just teach them about God, and it's just not been easy, you don't have to say anything. Just share this film, say, good film to watch, and let God do what God does.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
let
that's
me
it.
ask you,
Last thing,
go ahead. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
last thing I'll say on that, Christine, that's a good thought. If for anyone who's viewing this right now, who has a loved one, a friend, a relative, a neighbor, anyone who is a sports fan but has turned from God for whatever reason, or they just have grown slothful, they don't go to church anymore, mass, whatever it is, you this would be a good opportunity to say, hey, look, I just saw this film. This thing is good. Like, this thing's really good. I think you'd like it. What is it about, Christine? Oh, it's actually it's baseball. Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's great. It's got Mike Piazza in it. It's got Tom Glavine. It's got some Hall of Famers in it. Oh, really? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where do I get? So it is a good evangelization tool. I mean, I just want to throw that out there.
That's what I was thinking. My dad goes to Catholic mass every week, but who knows? Maybe this will help him get even closer to God, just to kind of watch this in the privacy of his own home as well. So I
Mhm.
think we both kind of said this, but I always end my show the same way: is name one thing you'd have our viewers do differently as a result of something we talked about today.
Well, I think the one thing that really kept germinating was the fact that if we proclaim ourselves to be Catholic Christians, it is incumbent upon us, especially in this day and age where we're still caught up in this moral wintertime. We're still trapped in this place where lack of reason still is part of our humanity, the society. It's to sort of shed the reluctance to proclaim what's in your heart, not in a haughty way, not in an arrogant way, but just hopefully a charitable,
Courageous.
loving way about what Christ, the truth that Christ, how he dwells in you, that you can proclaim it, even if it's a 5 against 1 situation, even if it's a situation where it's kind of dicey and you might jeopardize your job. It doesn't really much matter at the end of the day. What matters is our eternal soul. Now, is God going to judge us because we didn't step to the plate this one time when it was 501? Well, maybe not. Maybe not. But what I'll suggest to the viewer is work incrementally to begin to proclaim your faith just a little bit more when the opportunity presents itself, because it really is liberating, and it allows you to put your head on the pillow for sleep at night after your exam and saying, you know what, God, I got one right today, or at least I did the best I could, and that'll propel you into the next day. So I guess that was it. Like the Great Commission Jesus told his apostles at the very end, he commissions Christine, you, me, and everyone just to share the scripture, the good news, and the fact that he wants us with him one day in heaven, and that's the news that people want to hear that many don't. So proclaim the faith the best you can.
That is an amazing way to end the show. How can people find you?
I would just go to kevinwells.org. They can see my new book that's coming out next week called Coached by the Cure. It's a crazy one, but and I'm not going to say who the Cure is because I know all your viewers know who the Cure of ours is. But It's a crazy book that addresses the culture of the days, spoken by John Vianney. Oh, I just said it. John Vianney, 160 years after his death, in his own voice, what he would say to 2025, the West. So it goes there. So yeah, kevinwells.org.
So we'll get you back here to talk about that book, and you can find all of Kevin's books. He's had The Priests We Need to, I'm going to forget the titles because I'm trying
To
off the
save the
top of my,
church, to save the church,
To Save the
to save the
Church. We
priest
have,
and beggar, priest and
which I've
beggar,
read. Gracious, I can't even remember the titles now, but they were good books.
the
I'm only
hermit,
required
the
to
hermit.
remember the titles of my book, right?
I know it's tough. It's no, but we just keep writing them. We don't worry about who remembers. We just keep writing them.
Yeah, but some good work. God is really using you. And I like the trajectory he put you on. Start you off at baseball, grab people at the manly parts, and then go on now to the really manly parts, which is the Catholicism and the soldier for Christ, and getting you here to make these great connections. I hope everybody's able to read the article that you wrote that kind of talks about the movie, then gets the movie watches this weekend. And then we're going to get you on within the next couple of weeks talking about your new book.
I'd love to, whenever you want to do it, Christine.
All right, we'll get that on the air. All right, for those of you, thank you for spending some time with Kevin and me. Do yourself a favor, watch the movie Champions of the Faith Baseball Edition coming out this opening season weekend, but it will be out all season. But we'd really like to make a big bang, show the world that the Catholic faith is not only alive and well, but coming even more alive. And the warrior spirit that Christ planted within us is being enlivened through all that he is doing and through these miracle stories in this book in this movie as well. You can find me on breakfastwithbacon.com here on this channel. You can YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, Twitter. Do you do social media, by the way?
Just Facebook for the most part.
Just Facebook, yeah. So you can, and I'll put that link to Kevin's Facebook page here as well as mine. Please feel free to share this show with others. And if you'd like to support me, my Buy Me a Coffee link is below. This is really the only way that I make money, trying to spread the truths of the faith. So I'd be honored if you would do that. And if you can't do that, have a mass said for me, my family, Kevin's family, because he is like me and he does know that the eternal values from masses are way more important than any single dollar we could earn on this earth. So I would covet those prayers, covet those masses as well. So I think that's about it. And I didn't clue Kevin in at the end how I end my shows. He's been on a lot of times, but it's been a while, so he may have forgotten. So we're going to hopefully see if he remembers how we end this show. Okay. I am Dr. Christine Bacon. You've been watching Breakfast with Bacon, and I'd like to remind you always to live your life. Do you remember?
Sunny side up.
Oh, you're good.